Accrediting Excellence, the international authority for professional coaching and mentoring, proudly presents Both Sides of the Coin.
Whether you are a massive football fan or just tune in to watch your nation play, top-class players such as Ronaldo, Sancho and Kane are known and revered across the globe. But what about the staff who strive hard behind the scenes to make football the game we know and love? How can life coaching enable them to stay holistically well so they can continuously perform in a competitive environment? Today we get some top tips. Welcome to Both Sides of the Coin, a podcast produced by the IAPC&M. We're a leading accreditation body, and our aim is to increase public confidence and to raise industry standards by enforcing a rigorous accreditation process that ensures the quality of professional coaches and mentors. The podcast is aptly named Both Sides of the Coin because we talk to both a coach or mentor and one of their clients to explore both sides of the coaching mentoring intervention, what works and what doesn't. As the proverb says, iron sharpens iron. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm Jenny Butter, your host and an accredited master coach. I've been coaching for 10 years, mainly in the area of career transition and life coaching. Joining me today are Floss Andrews and her client, Steve Weaver. Flora, known as Floss, has worked within the sports industry for the past 20 years, and more recently at Premier League club Norwich City as head of professional services. Earlier in the year, she had a career change and now provides life coaching for people who work in football. Her client, Steve Weaver, is head of football development at Norwich City, and he was interested to find out more about how life coaching could help him. Welcome, both of you. I'm going to start with Floss and then flip over the coin and speak to Steve. Floss, tell me about yourself.
Hi, Jenny. So, as you said, I've worked in the football industry, well, sports industry, really, for 20 years. And on different sides, commercial and to do with the playing staff and academy side. And towards the end of my career, I realised that I'm more interested in the people that I'm working with. And I reached a point where working in football is quite a unique situation. And I have a family, a husband and kids, and it was quite tricky trying to keep on top of everything. So I got into life coaching because I had my own life coach, Fatima, and she was amazing and made me realise that that I could there was a way that I could actually do both of the things that I love. And so I recently trained to be a life coach with Carol Ann Rice at the Pure Coaching Academy, and just launching my business, as you say, to help others who work in the sport and football industry.
What insights did having coaching yourself give you to help you decide, actually, I want to do that for others?
I had always, sort of towards the end of my career, the side of what I was doing was actually, without me realizing, was actually coaching people. But I would try and sort out people's problems for them, rather than sort of and now I know how that actually, and I found that was getting me down, trying to sort out everyone's problems, and it was a rather impossible task. When I had coaching, it made me realize that actually, if you can sort out your problems yourself rather than having someone sort them out for you, it actually helps a lot more. So I realized that there was a better way of doing it, which is why I became interested in training to understand it and to be able to help other people properly rather than actually trying to fix everybody.
Thank you, Flora. That's a really unique insight. What pressures do your clients within football face that perhaps aren't so apparent in other industries? You mentioned before that it was a unique industry.
Yes, that's right. I think it's unique. It's somewhere that I've worked, and I see other people in other industries, so people may correct me, but I feel it's unique because there are certain pressures. So it's an absolutely amazing place to work. It's also a very addictive place to work, and it's very easy to get sort of pulled in, sucked in, and if you let it, then football can almost eat you up. So it's a sort of addiction. If you let it, it can take over your life. There are other pressures as well, in that well, if you reach a certain level in football, so a couple of my clients have reached quite a high level in football, and it's difficult to it can be quite lonely. It's difficult to share your thoughts and feelings, because there's also a sort of the way that the football industry has worked in the past. Hopefully it's improving, but it's quite a cutthroat place to work. So if you show weakness, or if your face isn't fitting anymore, it's a place that you can be quite quickly let go. So there's always that little threat in the back of your mind. So it can almost make people not want to show any form of weakness.
So how would you address that?
Where I help people is strengthening people within themselves. So creating an awareness in my clients of their own self, be it awareness, confidence, abilities, and so that they feel, if you have that confidence in yourself and satisfaction, then actually the sort of noise that you hear, or the noise that you can hear in football, and also the feeling of the sort of the pressure of not wanting to never be there, isn't quite so sort of all encompassing. The other thing that I would do is, because it can feel, so once you're in it, then it's quite overwhelming. So if you can create some good sustainable habits of your own, rather than being sucked into the wheel. So I'll try and help my clients to sort of break things down slowly and realize, their own strengths, their own areas of weakness that we can work on, and through that, then that builds up confidence, I think, in my clients.
Thank you. And life coaching, as well as, performance at work, also looks at all areas of a person's life. So they gain overall holistic wellness, things like emotionally and physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, if that's important to people. How do you bring that into your coaching sessions?
Yeah, exactly. I do that as well. So I'll work on different areas in different sessions, and all of those, as you say, all of those things are important. So I bring them in when my client is ready. So sort of when I feel that we've kind of approached a topic and dealt with that topic, then I'll sort of gently question, and ask them to sort of ask themselves, have they set themselves up financially? How is, I obviously don't know the detail, but it's more about just getting people to talk it through, and to, as you say, have all of the areas of their life sort of full, rather than having any pots that are sort of nearing emptiness.
And you often have coaching sessions whilst walking. What are the benefits do you find of coaching in the outside environment?
That is definitely my preferred way of coaching. I feel I love movement, and sort of sitting still, I think, is stifling for your sort of thoughts and brain. So when you're out moving, and specifically walking side by side with a client, A, it's non-confrontational. B, I walk in around parks and places in and around Norwich and Norfolk, where the route isn't something that you have to think about. So, and there are lakes and sort of things that I just think that natural inspiration can, without actually specifically talking about it, when you're just looking at something beautiful or something outside, it just sort of, I think, just helps your brain and your free flow. It takes you away from the environment that you may be sort of, your working environment. You go out somewhere different, and just I'll ask questions, and hopefully the movement of walking, being out in nature and being away from sort of your place of work or the football ground or the training ground, your inner self can come out a bit without really thinking about it.
Have you got just out of interest, a case study or an example where that happened to you or somebody you've worked with, where being in a fresh new environment outside has caused somebody to become unstuck or an epiphany to happen?
I think the epiphanies with my clients tend to happen in between my sessions. So I'm hoping that it's more of an unblock rather than an epiphany during the session. I have found that actually it seems to be in between the sessions that people say, I've thought about what we were talking about, and actually I've done this, or I've realized this. So I just think that I'm not sure it specifically sort of unblocks or creates an epiphany, but I think for me it just helps.
Thank you. And it sounds like you're being a pioneer, bringing life coaching to the football industry. What top tips have you got for other coaches who, like you, can see a need within an industry, but don't know how to break down the door in the way that you're doing?
I'm sure I'm not unique, and I'm sure there are other people that work in it. But I would just say, if you know it inside, if you have a confidence and you have a feeling that it's the right thing, because it's somewhere that you know and you understand and you can see that change is needed, but it's not being made, I would say just keep going and don't let the little voice on your shoulder sort of tell you to stop, because that instinct, if you have this feeling that there is an area where you really feel that you can help somebody, or even if it's two people that I'm helping, I think that is why I'm doing it. That is important to me. So I would say, don't listen to the little voice, and if you have an instinct, follow it.
That's really great advice and insight. Thank you. And my final question for you is, why did you decide to become accredited?
So accreditation for me, it wasn't really a question. I just knew that I wanted to be an accredited life coach, because for me, it is the sort of validation, it's proof, it's almost the equivalent of being a professional sports player. So my clients, work in an elite or act in an elite way, and I feel that I need to be as elite, show and be as an elite as I can, and being accredited is that. And also, I think because of sort of who I want to work with, word of mouth is going to be quite an important tool for me. And having being an accredited life coach is basically, hopefully, gives people that confidence that that I am of a level who that can help them.
Thank you so much, Floss. That was really insightful information for us as coaches. I'm going to flip over the coin now and speak to Steve, your client. Steve, tell us about yourself.
I'm 49 years of age. I've been in football since I was 15. I was a player a long time ago. I finished sort of very early and got into coaching as in my early 20s. And I've sort of had a journey, through the various leagues. I've worked at some big clubs, which sort of led me to sort of being at Norwich for the last 4 years. So I'm a I've sort of been coaching now for nearly 30 years. I've been sort of responsible for people for a long time, and and sort of in my role, it's really important that you keep up to date really with, it's not trends, but you sort of, from when I started to where we are now, we look at people very differently, and it's really important for any sort of people in leadership to be able to to realise that I'm working with young people, and how do they learn, and what do they need, and especially with such a large staff that I've got, that that you're at the forefront of being able to connect with them.
Steve, when you talk about the coaching that you do, you're talking about football coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a football coach, but I've got 31 staff that work under me. So, and then that's without the players. So I'm responsible for a large staff that I've got to try to connect with, and and on top of that, I coach the players as well. So it's obviously a large sort of operation, and it's something that obviously carries a lot of stress and different things with it.
So why did you want to work with Floss?
Well, we work together sort of first and foremost, and I've always been sort of intrigued and more down the psychological route. I've been very fortunate to work with people in the past, but more sort of dealing with me to deal with players, or dealing with me to deal with staff, not necessarily me dealing with me. So and I think it's as Floss alluded to, it's a unique industry, but it's also a lonely one. And when you're the head of something with a large sort of number of people, you don't really get a chance to talk things through. It can be very difficult. So obviously working with Floss just allows you to talk to to someone, and I think in society now it's becoming more prevalent. Go and talk to people with their mental health and different things. I just look at it in that you can get bogged down, and just having someone just to talk to regarding certain issues, not to sort of to judge anything, but then just sometimes go, just throw a word of advice, or are you really overthinking that, or can't really see anything in your way there. Believe it or not, makes a big difference. And I think when you're at the top of something, it, as you say, can be a bit of a lonely place, and just someone to talk to who can help you out and maybe just clear some of the mist in front of you is really important.
Steve, Floss was saying that life coaching isn't really known within the football industry. Prior to you starting sessions with her, what was your perception of what life coaching is?
I didn't really, to be fair, when I was talking to Floss, she was talking about what she was doing and sort of different things. And you can imagine at the moment around players and mental health, there's so much, go and talk to someone, but there's not an awful lot of stuff around people who deal with the lads, who deal with the players. So I sort of spoke to Floss for a little while about it, and then it was a bit like, when you're becoming confused by what the discussion was about, and I just said, Floss, I'm not being funny, can you just have a go? Because I can get a clearer picture in my head. So as sort of Floss alluded to, went for a walk and sort of went for an hour and talking about all sorts of stuff, and then it just becomes clear in your head. And I think the way I found it was we just went and had a chat about a multitude of things. It sort of went from work to sort of personal matters to different things, and just being able to talk and get it out sort of in a non-judgmental way. And Floss is very right. I mean, it's an industry where you can't really show as much weakness as maybe you'd like, vulnerability, as much as we'd like to have a real holistic approach. At the end of the day, I make, a lot of big decisions, on people and careers and different things. So it's just nice to someone to talk to about the issues that you have, because sometimes you just can't sort of convey that, in amongst your staff. It's sometimes a little bit difficult, although we try really hard to, include people in everything that we do. It's just sometimes very difficult just to speak to someone.
And so since starting life coaching yourself, what do you now do differently?
I think it's just a way of checking. I speak about all sorts. I mean, It can be members at work. It can be about this problem. What do you think of this? I'm talking about properties and stuff the other day, and and there's still things like, what's stopping you? And you start to think, and you go, well, nothing really. Or it's about, how do they see it? Steve, I can see the way you see it, but how do they see it? Have you spoke to them about it? And then you sort of sit back and it's sometimes just talking things through. And as I say, you've got the chimp on your shoulder that's chipping away at you, and it's convincing you to go down a different route, and it probably actually just you trying to convince yourself that that's the path that you don't want to go. It's actually not there. So I find it almost. I have one or two ideas before we meet to talk about, but it ends up going probably places that I never really thought. So, and I always come away from it, and I think Floss is right in terms of it's not necessarily on the day that I do my best reflections. It's probably the day after or the day after that. I'll be like, oh, right, yeah, okay. And then I'll end up speaking to someone about a certain thing that may have been playing on my mind. And, that might have taken a turn. And it just sort of like, it's just someone to talk to. It's a strange industry for being able to talk. So that's the way I've approached it. And they're great. So the ones that the meetings that we've had so far is I probably got with a preconception of one idea and come away with clarity on a different one. And I think, to be fair to Floss, she doesn't sort of answer any questions. She sort of just helps me find my own answers, really. So probably ones that I already knew, but every now and again she'll go, I'm not really sure, Steve, you're overthinking that. Which is, as I say, it's quite nice to have no one who's got a real opinion on anything. It's just talking things through. It gives you, at the end of it, maybe a little bit of clarity on your situation.
And that's an example of a good coach. Steve, how important is it for you to work with an accredited coach?
Well, to be fair, I've got to say, the industry is full of people, players are, the world's worst. You walk in, you can be the best player in the world, and all of a sudden you turn to a coach, you've probably got 5 minutes before they work out whether you're good or bad. They're very judgmental. They'll make opinions very quickly. And if you haven't got sort of the level of qualifications that go with the industry, so I can't work in my job without a pro license, which takes a long time. I got, my sports scientist can't work without a master's. Can't, so it's the accreditation and skills that come with just to be able to work in football is very high. So I think before you start, the industry is very unwilling to allow people in if they've not sort of gained those qualifications to, just to give you a start in it. Because at some stage you leave yourself vulnerable. And that's just the nature of the industry. It doesn't take an awful lot for someone to have a little bit of a pop at you. And the other thing is, I think in our industry, we're constantly doing, development and stuff. And we encourage throughout football, can you go on that course, go and look at that, go and do this, go and do study visits. And I think it's the same with probably Floss comes out of that background. And I think, I can see what she was saying before. It's really important that, because we get letters from all sorts of people wanting to do this, wanting to do that, want access to you as a life coach in this, as a psychologist there. And it's kind of like, well, we like a point of reference as well. So I think it's really important in an industry that is very qualification led. And I think it just provides a little bit of credence to the role as well. So, I certainly know that, it's something that you couldn't work in football without the appropriate qualifications. And I think it's a really good example of what you should do, really. And the amount of information that you get during the course can only make you a better life coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's important and great about the IAPC&M is that every 3 years you are then reassessed to see whether you are still up to that coaching standard. So, Steve, my final question for you then is, what feedback have you got for other coaches based on your experience with Floss that they can do to improve their coaching sessions?
I think sort of, my sort of experience with Floss, I know will probably be very different to other people that I know that speak to sort of Floss. I was talking about it with one of the senior sort of leaders today about it, and to be fair, he was very keen to go, I could do with exploring that. I think it's individual, if I'm being honest, and I think I've not spoken to Floss about it, to be honest, but I'm assuming that I would be different to the next person that's different to the next person, and that's probably the advantage of it. I think people will take it where they want to take it. If you know, so as I say, people might be more scripted, might want to talk about individual things that they got on the mind. I'm a little bit more, I've got that issue, or not issue, but I'll talk about that, and it'll go wherever. I'm just very, when I speak about what I do with Floss to other people, I said it's a really good way of communicating and getting things sort of out in the open that you think about yourself. And I recommend it to all the people that I talk to. But it just depends. It might be for some people, but I think we've seen a massive thing in the industry over with sports science, data, physios. I think the next thing will be, psychology working with players, which is prevalent, but not as prevalent as it's probably going to be. And I think the other thing is actually people like Floss working with coaches and talking through problems and helping the coaches who help the players.
Great. Well, what a great discussion and what a great insight, both of you. Thank you so much, Floss and Steve. If you would like to work with Floss or find out more about her work, then her company is called Mindset5, and you can also be found on LinkedIn. Search for Floss Andrews and send her a connection request. We're confident that anyone who attains an international authority for professional coaching and mentoring accreditation will be amongst the very best that the profession has to offer. So if you're someone who's interested in having some coaching or mentoring and want to find an accredited coach, mentor or training provider, or if you're a professional who's interested in becoming accredited, then please go to our website, coach-accreditation.services. And finally, if there's a topic that you would like me to cover on future episodes of Both Sides of the Coin, then I would love to hear from you. My email, jenny.podcast@coach-accreditation.services. Bye for now.